Hey, and welcome to Life in DNA with Amanda Renee. If you like this video, please click the like button, and if you would like to subscribe, then I would appreciate it. That would be awesome. But let's get started. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. I did, except going to my uncle's house triggered my allergies somehow. And so if I sound off, it is because I am hopefully on the tail end of probably a sinus infection, if I had to guess. I, as you know, have Hashimoto's, and I have to be on several medications to keep my allergies under control. And one of them, the more expensive one, I was about to run out. And with all the holidays, really hated to fill that prescription because I have to buy 3 months. It's a compounded prescription, and so I have to buy 3 months worth at a time. And I hate paying. I hate paying for that. So I was skipping it, and it's the main one that keeps my allergies in check. And so I hadn't been on it regularly for about a week. And so when I went to my uncle's, he lives on a farm not that far from here, but the wind was blowing, we were outside a lot, and it was enough to just get him going. So if I sound funny, that's why, but I'm hoping I'm on the tail end of it. So yeah, I wanted to talk about the depression and anxiety that goes along with Hashimoto's. I've probably touched on it a little bit before, but I decided to do just a whole podcast dedicated to it. If it goes long, I'll make it 2 parts, but I should be able to talk about all of it at once. It's not something I've talked to a lot of people about. I've always been one to try to kind of deal with my issues by myself, on my own. I do have a sister. She struggles with some of those things too, and so I've talked to her about it before. She's helped. I try not to worry my husband or my kids with it a whole lot. I've probably touched on it a little bit, just so they don't think, wow, mom's just being really weird lately. But it isn't something that I've talked a lot about. There are definitely 2 things that go along with Hashimoto's, and I didn't realize that. Back when I was, before I was diagnosed, I didn't know what was going on. If you've listened to my story, you realize I first realized I was really anemic. But one of the reasons I went ahead and got help and found and discovered that I was anemic, it was so bad, she said if it would have been even a fraction lower, she would have been giving me a blood transfusion. That's how bad it was. But I had put off going to the doctor. Again, I was, at that time, still in my mom's church. Felt a lot of pressure that, well, if I was a good enough Christian or had enough faith, then I shouldn't have to go to a doctor, and I should, just have faith to be healed. So I put off going way longer than I should have. But one of the main reasons I went ahead and went into the doctor was I was getting so depressed and anxious, and that wasn't normal for me. I've struggled with some things all my life, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but it wasn't normal for me to, I had to guilt myself to get out of bed in the morning, and I think that kind of made me depressed. It was lack of energy that made me not want to get out of bed, and that wasn't the depression or anything like that, but I didn't have energy to do anything, and I'm a stay-home homeschool mom. I have to get up and teach my kids. I have to get up and make sure they get breakfast and, do the laundry, do all the things that I have to get done in a certain day. And it was just all I could do to drag myself out of bed. And that worried me. I would say the anxiety for me was probably more of a thing than depression. Depression for me would be more of, it would hit in just like waves. Something would go wrong and I wouldn't be able to handle it. Or I would sit there and worry about things that like weren't even happening at the moment. But a thought would hit me and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if this happened or this happened? And I would get really down. I never got like suicidal, but definitely the thoughts that like, well, life would be easier for me if I wasn't here definitely crossed my mind. As a mom and a wife, though, and a Christian, I would talk myself out of those thoughts very quickly. Like, okay, well, they'd be great for me. I'd be in heaven, but not so great for my family left behind. So I never had any of those kind of issues. Yes, thoughts popped into my head, but nothing where I was actually going to act on anything like that, thankfully. I do know some people don't have that foundation or even the ability to think that far ahead, and they just let it overwhelm them. Now my anxiety did get very overwhelming for a while. And the funny thing is, not funny at the time, I guess, but looking back, I had convinced myself that some trees I had planted like a decade before were all of a sudden, they were too close to the water line. And I was freaking out. I would worry myself. My stomach would hurt. I would be in a panic, worrying about these trees, like the roots were going to go and it was going to cost us a bunch of money. Finally, when I got on medication and quit having those thoughts, then all of a sudden the trees didn't worry me quite so much. Those were the things that got me to go to the doctor. I couldn't live like that anymore. I knew something was wrong. I knew it had to be some kind of imbalance going on in my body because it wasn't normal for me to be quite like that. I mean, I've always been kind of a worrier and stress out really easy about things, but not like that. It was real bad. And so once I got my anemia and started getting my thyroid kind of in check, then those thoughts and those panics went away. I have read different books, obviously, on Hashimoto's and they always want to know your root cause. And while I haven't gotten to do enough testing to really discover my root cause, I read something interesting. I believe it was in Dr. Wentz's root cause book. And she was saying that a lot of people with ulcers end up with Hashimoto's and that can be part of it. Well, I grew up with ulcers. I had ulcers until I was at least 19. I worried about everything. I mean, everything, any little thing that went wrong, my stomach would instantly hurt. It was awful. I was every day at school, my stomach hurt. Every day at home, my stomach hurt. Just constantly hurting because I worried about everything. And then, of course, learning, and I do think part of that, I was born with kind of a more sensitive personality that way, more sensitive to other people's feelings. I'm very empathetic on personality tests. I tested about as high as you could test on the empathy side. I think it was less than 1% of the population is as high in empathy as I tested, and it's like, great. That explains why I can't watch certain movies. I will instantly cry. I automatically put myself into other people's situation. I can't even hear a sad song. I will put myself in the song, and then I start bawling. And it's entertaining for my family, but it's not much fun for me. But after figuring out that my mom was a covert narcissist, I realized, well, she played into that she used that in my personality to get me to be the way she wanted, and be her emotional supply and do all of that. So that didn't make things easier for me growing up. Instead of trying to help fix the situation, I think she just used it to her advantage. But for a while I completely blamed her for that, and then I realized my son is a lot like me in that way, and he would get just random nervous stomachs, and a lot of times it's when we're going to go somewhere, and I used to get like that. I would be homesick, but I mean, anything set my stomach off because it was already messed up. But if I couldn't even go spend the night with my grandparents 10 minutes away, I would get homesick, my stomach would get nervous, and I'd want to be home. And my son would get like that, but he would get like that if I was even traveling with him. Like, it was homesick literally for home, whereas mine usually was, I thought I wanted my mom. And so I realized, well, part of that I was kind of born with, but when he has that, I try to help him. I try to tell him, it'll pass. You need to go do the fun thing you were planning on doing, and don't let that stop you, because I have a lot of regret of letting that stop me. And I think my mom liked that I would rather be with her than at my grandparents, and so instead of talking me into staying, sometimes she would just pick me up. I think a few times I probably stayed, but that was probably my dad's doing, if I had to guess. So I grew up with ulcers, and I was very anxious. So I would say it's easy for my body and my mind to slip back into anxiety. I would definitely say that I am more on that side than the depression side. Although I did struggle a little bit with that at first with the Hashimoto's. And then recently, this past summer was really hard. I don't know. I still to this day don't know what it was that caused it. I know it was an imbalance of something. I did have a lot going on, and I get overwhelmed very easily because I'm a people pleaser. I don't like to tell people no. And so I take a lot on for myself, and I have a lot going on, just with my regular stuff without taking on things on top of that. But I started getting really anxious again, like to the point of having panic attacks. Some of them worse than others, but I would just start crying for no reason and freaking out about nothing. I mean, I would try to ask myself what was going on, what am I stressing out about, and there really wouldn't be anything big out of the ordinary going on, but yet my mind would just be kind of panicking and freaking out, and I would just cry. I mean, there were days I was just bawling all day long. Usually I would try to suck it up before my husband got home. So because I didn't have an explanation for why I was feeling that way. So I would try to suck it up. It seemed to be, I know for a while, it seemed to be easier when he was home because I had a distraction, I guess. And when it was just me and the kids, even if I was with the kids, I would be kind of okay. But like as soon as I'd go to take a shower and be by myself, I would freak out. It was weird and it was not fun. It lasted a few months. I got to the point where I was so overwhelmed, and I thought a lot of my problem was, well, I needed, some space. I needed some time by myself. The kids were fighting a lot and not getting along. I was having trouble with that, and I thought, okay, if I can just get by myself. So I got my in-laws to take the kids for a couple of weeks, and so they were going to go have fun. Well, that ended up not great. They had a tornado the first night, and I got sick right when I dropped them off. I started getting sick, so I didn't get to even enjoy and do anything the first week that they were gone. Plus, I was worried about them because the tornado had hit, knocked out power. They were living in my in-laws' camper for about a week just so they could have electricity. And this is in the middle of summer, so it was hot on top of that. I couldn't have, even if I had driven to go get them, I couldn't have gotten in because of all the downed branches and the power lines. So it was not a great situation, and it didn't help my anxiety at all. So my solution didn't work. In the meantime, a few of my prescriptions, I had one doctor test my hormones, and my testosterone was low, so she had me on something, but I hadn't been on it long enough. I think I read it, you had to be on it like 3 months before it kicked in. And I was like, great, I have to deal with this for the 3 months, assuming that was what the imbalance was causing the anxiety. And it might have been because, a few months later, I'm fine now. But, so that didn't help that they were gone. And I went to pick them up, and I'm driving by myself. I'm happy. I'm going to get to go to see my kids again. And I'm ready to see them, and I'm driving to the halfway point. I'm having a good time. Traffic's not bad. And I take the exit for the turnpike, and a panic attack starts coming on. And that's not a good place to have a panic attack when you're driving on the turnpike. Gonna go 75 miles an hour. Not good. And so my heart rate, I felt it in my stomach first, which for me is always where I feel it. And my heart started racing. And then my brain started to freak out. And I had to tell myself, you can't do this now. You just can't do this right here. I was like trying to control my breathing. I tried to get my mind off of how I felt and off of what was going on. And one of my nieces had a bike accident a few days before, and so I was like, okay, pray for her. And so I was just, praying for her, trying to get my mind off of this. Everything finally kind of calmed down, but it really freaked me out to have that happen while I was driving. And I had noticed that was the biggest attack that happened when I was driving, but I had noticed that my anxiety would go up when I was driving. A lot of times with the kids though, and so I didn't like that. That freaked me out. Seems like a few days later, we were gonna see my sister. Can't remember. No, right after that, we were going to go on a family trip. I think it was like maybe a few weeks after that, a big family gathering that I had to be in charge of arranging with my whole dad's side of the family. And I was in charge of the menu, the food, telling everybody how much it's going to cost. Nobody wanted to help me shop for it, so I was going to have to do all of that myself. My sisters and my cousins and I had decided a few years ago, we needed to take this off of our aunt's plate. She was, getting older. She didn't need to do it anymore. We're like, okay, we're in our 40s. Maybe we can step up and actually be the grown-ups now instead of acting like the teenagers. And then somehow, of course, as it always does, it ended up just landing in my plate. And so I had to be the one to do it. And I got like spreadsheet happy. I'm talking about a spreadsheet with multiple tabs so that because everybody comes to this thing on a different day and everybody has different number of family members. So there's different meals you're going to eat. Some of us try to come as much of the week as we can because it's so much fun. And in order to make it as fair for everyone as possible, I was trying to make this elaborate spreadsheet and have it where, you only paid for what your family actually ate, because we had always kind of just divided it by how many were there. And for some of us that only ate one meal there, it felt like expensive for that, and it made it harder to go. And so I wanted everybody to get to come and everybody get to have fun. And so I was getting, having my anxiety attacks during all of this time while I'm trying to plan, which wasn't great. And then it all kind of came to a head. I had messaged everybody on a, big group text what I was planning to do. Normally everybody brings a different side to this one main meal, but you have to bring dessert, snacks, the side, and drinks. You have all this stuff everybody's coming up for, and some of them only come up for the one day. And I was trying to make it easy on everyone and saying, okay, I will buy the stuff to make a few desserts, and since I'm going to be there most of the week, I'll make the desserts ahead of time, and I'll get the main sides. I'll make the main sides in the big grocery haul, and then if anyone wants to make anything outside of that, then they can. But if they don't want to spend the money or don't want to have the hassle, we'll already have the main things provided there, and everyone will just split the cost, and it'll end up being cheaper and easier in the long run. It was just going to be a lot of work for me on the front end. Well, only a couple of people responded to that, and one of my aunts was like, hey, if I can just give you money and not have to worry about bringing hardly anything, that's awesome. I would prefer that. And then it comes to a couple of days later, and I'm emailing or messaging everybody about it, and all of a sudden, one of my sisters has a problem with it. And I'm like, well, I texted everybody about this a few days ago before I went through all the work. I get a grocery list. This is how detailed and anal I am about this. I would have a grocery list of literally everything we need for every meal, every day we're there. And I would go on the Walmart app to the town we're going to be buying it in and put the price. And then have another line where how many we need of it. And then multiply that out, and then how many, how much it's going to cost total. And then that feeds into the meals for the day and how much that costs and how many people are going to be eating. I put a lot of work into this. And my sister had not replied to the first text, but all of a sudden she had a problem with it. And I freaked out. Like, I freaked out. I think I replied something, or she knew I was upset, and I was not happy. I think my husband was at home, but he was in the other room, and I didn't want anyone else to know I was upset, because I didn't want it to blow up where it was a thing when we went when we actually went on the trip, because this is just a few days before we were leaving. So I went in my son's room, and I'm like bawling and freaking out, and I can't breathe. And I text my other sister, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And then I had on the group text a cousin who I had messaged the original message to. I had also talked to her at her son's birthday. It was her mom is the one that said, hey, if I can just give you money and not have to bring anything, that's awesome. Love that plan. She was there. I had talked to her about it. She was on board with it. Now she was agreeing with my sister that no. And their whole thing was, we like all the different sides everyone brings. And I'm like, in the original message I said, if anybody wants to bring the extra thing. Anyway, it was the whole thing. And I was pissed. Like, so pissed. Because I had sent this message. Nobody had said they didn't want to do it that way. I had gone through all this work. I mean, I was so mad. And my anxiety was making it worse. So everything was amplified 100 times. And so we go on the trip, we get there, and I have to do all the shopping. Nobody else was coming till the next day. And my one sister, not the one that griped, my other sister and my brother-in-law saw what was happening, and they were like, hey, we're gonna go to Sam's. Is there anything if there's anything we can get cheaper there, we'll take it off your hands, we'll pick it up there. And so they did help me shopping that way. And then my daughter helped me do the big shopping the first day. So I had to spend the whole trip, and that wasn't even the worst. That wasn't even everything wrong. The air conditioning went out in the cabin, and it was stupid hot one night. So we're all having to sleep. It was awful. It stormed off and on, and the water in this pool that there is to swim is fed from a natural spring. So it's ice cold water. So it has to be pretty hot outside for you to want to go swim. And it was hot like 1 or 2 days, and then the rest of the time it was fairly nice, if not raining. So this trip was a disaster. We had fun, but it was so bad. And anyway, the sister that actually helped me had, caught my other sister and my cousin kind of talking about me, about the whole blow up with all of that. My sister that had complained did call. Once she realized I was really upset, she had called and was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize you had sent that other message, and I'm sorry. It was already too late, but whatever. Anyway, so all of that was happening on top of me having horrible anxiety, and we were trying to pack up the last day. It's storming, it's lightning. I know we're gonna have a hard time getting the truck loaded. We all have to go into this one, we call it the shack, but it has a big kitchen, then there's a bedroom and a bathroom in the back for one person to stay. And all of us are having to be in this thing trying to clean it out. Well, a bunch of people decided they're just going to they're going to leave. They're not even going to come help clean this out, clean it up. With any food left over, we divide up and we take it. And so there's only a few of us to do that because everybody else ditched us. And the people that were griping ditched us or didn't show up till later. And my cousin has two of my cousins have their little kids in there. And I'm sitting on the floor. I'm trying to pack up my kids' swim stuff and get all our stuff gathered and get it ready to get in the truck. And a panic attack hits. Thankfully, no one was in there except my sister and brother-in-law, and I think I freaked them out. Like, I could see by the look on their faces they had never seen me like that. And I couldn't hardly breathe. I was like hyperventilating. I was freaking out. And finally my sister and my brother-in-law got me calmed down, and I got everything loaded and was fine after that. But so my sister realized, oh crap, she really does. She really is having trouble with anxiety. And she understood. She's dealt with some stuff off and on. And we had to go up there for one of my brother-in-law's retirement. We had to go back up to the city for that the very next week. So I had to go see my other sister again. We worked everything out and everything was fine. But I was still dealing with anxiety off and on. And so my sister was telling me, you know, it's not a bad thing to ask for help with that, to get you through it. And so when I got back home from that trip, I talked to my doctor, and she got me on something to help me with my anxiety. Now, as soon as the prescription got filled, everything balanced back out. I took a couple of the pills so I could see kind of what it would do for my body. But whatever the imbalance was had balanced itself back out, and I haven't had any panic attacks since. So it was weird. But all of that to say that if you have Hashimoto's, or if you even think you have a thyroid issue of any kind, and you get overwhelmed real easy, and you get depressed, and you get down on yourself, and you get anxious, and you know that isn't your normal, then please go and get your labs run and get help, and ask them, you know, for something. If it's affecting you, like for me, when I realized I was having panic attacks when I was driving, you know, that's dangerous. That's not safe. So if it's affecting your life in that way, definitely go and ask your doctor to help you figure out what's causing it, first of all. But if there's something that can help you in the meantime, because like for me with the hormone, you know, it was going to take 3 months for that to kick in. And I was too stubborn or too prideful to ask for, you know, medical help with it until it had already balanced itself back out. And I regret that, because a lot of the things I went through this summer may have been easier and not so hard for me and everyone around me if I had asked for help sooner and got something sooner. So I would just recommend, you know, ask for help. Get help. Don't deal with it on your own like I did, because I suffered for several months just because I didn't want to talk about it to anybody. And that's not a good thing. If I could go back, I would do it differently. But so that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. Yeah. And definitely a relationship with God helped keep me from going, you know, too far over the edge with the depression. I believe that's really important. And even though with everything going on with my mom, like I've said, I've kind of kept God at arm's length with that, just because of the connection of her being a preacher, that I know I love God and I know I have a relationship with God, but there has been a little bit of a hold off as far as going very deep with him anymore, just because of her. And finally I'm to the point where I'm ready to put that aside and draw closer to him again. And I have been, and it's been helpful, really helpful, especially with all of that kind of thing. Although I do have some updates with all of that to tell you next week. So, yeah. Fun times with a narcissist mother, let me tell you. But anyway, that'll be for next week. So I hope that you all enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button. And I'd appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button. And even the notification bell, and I'll let you know when I have a new episode up. I'd appreciate that. And I will see you next time.